صل وسلم وبارك على نبينا وحبيبنا وقرة أعيننا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين وبعد. The theme tonight, inshallah, the Quranic theme that we're going to be sharing tonight is the theme of Tawakkul. And I put it here specifically because it's very much connected to the theme of courage and bravery that we talked about yesterday. And because of their closeness and because how they lead to one another or they result from one another, I wanted them to be close by so that you could, inshallah, appreciate that affiliation. Before I go through the verses that talk about this, and the Quran is filled with verses that talk about tawakkul, it's a very, very widespread topic. You find it everywhere. And in my opinion, it's one of the most important tools within a Muslim's toolbox. It's something that every Muslim should know and should know well. And it's something that once your child is old enough to kind of worry about the future and think about what's coming, they should learn what tawakkul means and how to practice it and what exactly it requires to be done appropriately. It is one of the hallmarks of being a Muslim for sure, and a proper understanding of it is a good representation of your relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and your understanding of the world that you live in. And it brings forth not just a mentality, but also brings forth a way of life. So it's not just a way of seeing things, it's also a way of practicing, generally speaking. And tawakkul is not specific to religious things. Tawakkul is actually a religious tool that applies to every aspect of being alive. Everything that you do in life, tawakkul is going to be there at the center front. And the main points about understanding tawakkul, and we're going to talk about it specifically during the post-Fajr Tazkiyah Pearls Durus for sure. It has its own section, so I'm not going to go into too much detail today. I'll leave it, inshallah, for that session. But generally speaking, tawakkul requires a few things. The first thing it requires is you to be trying your absolute best. Without that piece, really, tawakkul doesn't work. It doesn't mean that you're perfecting, you're behaving perfectly, because perfection is not something that the human being can aspire to or achieve, but rather that you're trying your best, even if your best at a certain time is not that great. Sometimes your best at any given moment is not the best because of the fact that you're going through a trial of some sort, or you're struggling with something, or life is a roller coaster, and you always have different circumstances. But within the circumstances that you're in, the concept is trying your best. What is your best? What's the best that you can do here? Are you exhausting all of your resources? Are you putting in all of your effort? In order for tawakkul to apply, that first piece has to be there. Without that piece, it's really not tawakkul anymore. Scholars have different names to call it, and it doesn't matter to me what the scholars call it. It is just not tawakkul in essence, because you're not fulfilling the first condition, the first part of it. The second condition, or the second part, second element of tawakkul is an inner dependence upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala regarding the outcomes. It's an inner dependence upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the word tawakkul is taken from that element. The word tawakkul is actually extracted from that element, which is the inner dependence upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because they're all three elements of tawakkul are extremely important. It's impossible to rank them, but if you had to, this piece probably would be, it would come in first place. To depend upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. To know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who delivers the outcomes, that you do not deliver the results. You don't have the ability to. You know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the steward of you and of all of your affairs. And you accept that. And that is actually a satisfying aspect of your faith. It's a comforting piece of information that you carry around. It grants you that trust, it grants you that ease, because you know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who is caring for your affairs in general. That internal dependence upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is absolutely critical. Because, and the reason that tawakkul is named after it is because this is the religious piece. The other elements of tawakkul are practical. You don't need to be religious to do them. Doing your best, you don't need to be religious to do your best. Anyone can do their best. That's easy, right? But the peace that's religious is this, is knowing deep inside that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who delivers the results, He delivers the outcomes, and you depend upon Him subhanahu wa ta'ala. And even if things go south, and they go south bad, you still know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is watching over you. That مَا وَدَّعَكَ رَبُّكَ وَمَا قَلَى. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not neglect you, nor did He forget about you. That this is a part of the trial that He has put in place for you, and that you will be rewarded for this, and because of that, you're at peace, even though you're in the midst of a storm. Even though this is probably the worst thing that's ever happened to you, but you're still, you're still able to collect yourself and to hold yourself to a standard of ethics and principles that you had before, because you know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is still watching over you. Depend upon Him. The third element of tawakkul is content with the results, whatever they may be. This piece, content, this is, when we talk about this after Fajr, we're going to spend most of the time talking about this piece. Because a lot of the scholars will say, will equate tawakkul to rida. It's very important. If you're not content with the result, then really this is not working. Meaning, if you work hard towards your goal and you get it, alhamdulillah, rida is easy because you got what you wanted. But if you don't, then what? Tawakkul is where you are still satisfied. You are content with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's decree, with His choices for you subhanahu wa ta'ala. You're capable of moving on. You'll brush off, get up and try again. You'll dust yourself off and move forward, or you change routes if you have reason to believe that this this door that you're knocking on is not for you. But regardless of what you end up doing, rida, content, is an integral part of understanding what tawakkul is. So tawakkul is all three, putting them together. You're trying your best. You know deep inside that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who delivers results, and you're happy with whatever He gives you. Whatever He chooses for you, you're content with that. You have no problem with it. Living like this makes you brave, which is yesterday's theme. If you function like that, you end up having the ability to be courageous, because you're able to depend upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You're able to put your matters in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's hands, accept whatever the results are. You are trying your best, you're calculating your risk, you're doing the best you can, and you're moving forward with it. It grants you courage. Tawakkul grants people the ability to be courageous, which is why the story that I told about courage yesterday, which is the story of the Prophet ﷺ, in my opinion, is the ultimate example of tawakkul. Whenever I tell this story within Seerah, it's the ultimate example of tawakkul. When the Prophet ﷺ did everything he possibly could, he took every sabab that he could find, like all of the causes, all of the worldly maneuvers that he could make, he made them all, and then he khalas, whatever, la tahzan, Allah ma'ana, I did everything I can, I have nothing to be, I have no regrets, right? And that's what tawakkul is. He doesn't like the outcome. He didn't want to be killed that day, alayhi salatu wasalam, but that's tawakkul. I'm okay with the outcome. If this is the outcome, then that's the outcome. It wasn't. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bailed him out, and Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, and granted us a chance at being Muslim and learning the deen. Subhanahu wa ta'ala falahu alhamd. But tawakkul applies here more than it applies to probably any other story that I can think of. You as a Muslim must understand this well, and you have to have examples of practice of this in your life, practices that were successful and practices that were not. You have to be able to identify when you tried to practice tawakkul and you failed. It's very important. If you don't have that example, then you need to find it, because we all did. We all have that example where we tried to perform tawakkul and we didn't do a very good job at it. We failed in performing tawakkul, and it did not. We lacked in some way. Either we lacked in putting the effort, or we lacked in our sense of dependence upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or we lacked in content. The question that I'm going to leave you with as I move forward to the verses is the question that some people will ask, and I think it's a valid question to ask, and I think you have to have a good answer for it. If I'm doing everything I can and I'm proficient with what I'm doing, why would I need to have tawakkul? Why would I need to depend upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? This is and if you can answer that question, then you understood what tawakkul is. If you can answer that question, if you can explain to yourself why is it that you're going to depend upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If you have an exam tomorrow, and you have studied, you know the book inside, you know it better than the lecturer, right? You know it better than the lecturer. And someone gave you the questions for tomorrow. You know what they are. And you practiced them all night. You still need tawakkul. If you can't say yes, then you haven't understood it yet. Like if you can't say yes, then you have not understood what tawakkul is yet. And you have to still work on yourself until you understand what tawakkul is. Because yes, of course tawakkul applies there. Because there's 1,000,001 things that can happen between now and tomorrow that will deprive you from the ability to passing your exam. There's an infinite number of scenarios where you will not pass the exam even though you did all of this. That's why tawakkul is always needed. And the idea of I have no prep, but I'm going to go in hoping that I pass, it's not really tawakkul, as I pointed out before. It's not really tawakkul. You can do that. I'm not saying that you can't. I'm not saying that you can't go in unprepared and say, Ya Rab, waffiq, Ya Rab, grant me success. You can do it, but don't call it tawakkul, because that's not what it is. That is hope. Hope is fine. Hope is valid. Hope is not it's not wrong in Islam. Having hope in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, having hope that maybe things work out against against all odds, especially the odds that you could have controlled against your own odds, you can do that. It's not good. You shouldn't be proud of it. Don't get used to it. You will be sinful for it, and it's not called tawakkul. All right? All those things put together. So go ahead. Enter a situation where you're not prepared and have hope. Just remember that this is not tawakkul, and it's against the odds you could have controlled. Don't get used to it. Don't be proud of it, and know that you're sinful for it. If you have these 5 things, then fine, go ahead. Tawakkul is a different concept altogether. And I'm going to talk about it in more depth, inshallah, in one of the post-Fajr durus, probably next week, not this one. All right, so let's go through the first set of verses that talk about this concept. And it's all throughout the Quran. Honestly, you don't even need me to. I almost didn't choose it as a Quranic theme because it was too obvious. But I thought it's worthwhile to remind everyone, myself and remind all of you of it, because your kids have to learn this. Once they reach a certain age, you have to sit down and talk to them about what this means. This is a major, essential Islamic tool. They have to understand what this means, and they have to learn how to practice it, and they have to ask their questions. You have to offer answers. If you don't have the answers, then get those answers first, so you can offer, so you can help them wrap their head around this extremely important Islamic idea. All right, the first set of verses that we'll hear in the first set of 4 rak'at tonight, inshallah, and we'll enjoy them, is the wording of Musa alayhi salam to his people. وَقَالَ مُوسَى يَا قَوْمِ إِن كُنتُمْ آمَنْتُمْ بِاللَّهِ فَعَلَيْهِ تَوَكَّلُوا إِن كُنتُمْ مُسْلِمِينَ فَقَالُوا عَلَى اللَّهِ تَوَكَّلْنَا رَبَّنَا لَا تَجْعَلْنَا فِتْنَةً لِلْقَوْمِ الظَّالِمِينَ وَنَجِّنَا بِرَحْمَتِكَ مِنَ الْقَوْمِ الْكَافِرِينَ. Musa alayhi salam, in the midst of his struggle with Fir'aun, trying to free Bani Israel, trying to get them out of Egypt, trying to get them across the Red Sea and back to their Holy Land. In the midst of this struggle, he would turn to them and say this to them. And this was at their lowest moment. This wording from Musa alayhi salam to his people happened at the moment where Banu Israel were the most oppressed, where they were the most afraid and scared, where Musa alayhi salam had the least amount of hope in things working out, meaning the circumstances were not pointing in a direction of things actually functioning. Fir'aun was not negotiable, despite all of the miracles and the signs, and Fir'aun was not budging. The degree of persecution that Banu Israel were suffering from was increasing, was getting worse, and things were just not headed in the right direction. So Musa alayhi salam would turn to his people, and he would say this: In kuntum amantum billah. And the wording here is what is important. It's the wording that Musa alayhi salam chose to teach this concept. That in kuntum amantum billah, if you truly have belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if we can call the word iman belief, when I don't like it, if you have a true understanding and comprehension of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and you're truly committed to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in your faith, meaning your deen is solid, فَعَلَيْهِ تَوَكَّلُوا, then you must move to the next step, which is being able to perform tawakkul upon Him, which is being able to depend fully upon Him subhanahu wa ta'ala, which is why He says, in kuntum muslimin. If you have truly submitted to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then perform tawakkul. If you look at where tawakkul falls in this ayah, it is conditioned by 2 things. A condition before it and a condition after it. The condition before it is in kuntum amantum, if you have iman. And the condition after it is in kuntum muslimin, if you have Islam. So the 2 main concepts that we have in our deen, in order for tawakkul, they're a condition for tawakkul. You need both in order for tawakkul to actually function. You have to have the practice, which is what Islam is. And you have to have the theology or the belief in order, which is what iman is, in order for you to be able to practice tawakkul. If you believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and you truly submit to His will, then you have to learn to depend upon Him. Banu Israel were coming towards a moment in their history where they had to make a very, very difficult decision. They had to make the decision of rebelling against this dictator. Rebellion against a dictator is one of the scariest things that a group of people will ever do, for many reasons. The amount of bloodshed that can result of it, the level of persecution that can be increased 10 or 20-fold, the loss of the status quo, the loss of the sense of security that people have. It's very difficult to participate in rebellion, especially if you have been enslaved for a long time, especially if you have very little to begin with, so you're not comfortable. So Musa alayhi salam, this is what he wanted to say. He needed to remind them, if you truly amantum billah, because when Israel, up to the point that Musa came back to them from Yemen, or from Midian, they had lost their connection to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They had lost their belief system. Musa alayhi salam, when he came back, he restored it for them. So these were a group of people who were still new. Iman was a concept that was a little bit new to them. Islam was a concept that was a little bit new to them. Submitting to Allah and having faith in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was still fresh. They were still struggling with it, But he had to teach them this next step. فَعَلَيْهِ تَوَكَّلُوا. You have to depend upon him. He's telling this to them, meaning you have to go ahead and do that which you have to do. We're going to have to do what we have to do. Which is why, what did they say afterwards? فَقَالُوا, their response, عَلَى اللَّهِ تَوَكَّلْنَا. Upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala we depend. رَبَّنَا لَا تَجْعَلْنَا فِتْنَةً لِلْقَوْمِ الظَّالِمِينَ. Oh Allah, don't make us a fitna for the oppressors. What does that mean? I mean, don't allow the oppressors to murder us and that be a trial for them that they're going to be punished by Yawm al-Qiyamah. Don't make me the trial of an oppressor. Don't make me the reason that the oppressor goes to Jahannam because he ends up killing me and murdering my family and taking away my land or taking away my possessions. I don't want to be the fitna for the zalimeen. This is not the first time this dua was made. Ibrahim alayhi salam in Surah Mumtahina makes the same dua. It's a dua that has some degree of frequency in the Quran. We do not hope to be oppressed. The Muslim does not want to be oppressed. This mazlumiyah, this concept of wanting to be the victim, this victim mentality is not something that we want, by the way. We don't look forward to it. We want to get out of it. Islam actually doesn't function fully if you're in a state of oppression. If it did, the Prophet ﷺ would have not left Mecca. He left Mecca to Medina because in Mecca he was oppressed. Islam could not reach its full form in Mecca because of oppression. He had to go to Medina where it could reach its full form. So people who are oppressed can't practice Islam fully. It's not something that we want. So the dua of Banu Israel is رَبَّنَا لَا تَجْعَلْنَا فِتْنَةً لِلْقَوْمِ الظَّالِمِينَ. Don't make us a trial for the oppressors where they are punished because of us, because we fail to achieve the objective, because we rebel against them and then they beat us and then they murder us and then that is their punishment Yawm al-Qiyamah. The people of Al-Buruj, of Surah Al-Buruj, Ashab al-Ukhdud, they were a fitna for the zalimeen in this story. The people who were thrown into the fire, they were a fitna for the oppressors of that time. The oppressors of that time were going to be punished because of what they did to them. We don't want that. We don't look forward to people being persecuted in order for Allah to punish the persecutors. That's not what we want. So the reason they're making this dua is because of the fear that they're carrying. They're scared because they know what Musa's asking for. Buckle up. We have a ride. It's going to be bumpy. This is not going to be fun. It's going to be scary. So, عليه توكلوا. إن كنتم آمنتم بالله فعليه توكلوا إن كنتم مسلمين. If you have accepted Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and you've submitted to Him, then you need to perform tawakkul. So they said, على الله توكلنا. That group of people at that moment were willing to make that. They were willing to make that jump of faith. They weren't willing to make the ones that came later, but they made that one. رَبَّنَا لَا تَجْعَلْنَا فِتْنَةً لِلْقَوْمِ الظَّالِمِينَ. Don't make us a trial for those who are oppressing us. وَنَجِّنَا بِرَحْمَتِكَ مِنَ الْقَوْمِ الْكَافِرِينَ. And save us through your compassion and mercy from the disbelieving group, from Fir'aun and his people. Save us through your mercy from him. So to them it was very clear what they were asking for. They knew what was coming next. That's why وَأَوْحَيْنَا إِلَى مُوسَى, the verses after, وأخيه أن تبوأ لقومكما بمصر بيوتا وجعلوا بيوتكم قبلة وأقيموا الصلاة. And he was told, okay, Musa, you make your houses the qibla, your house, and then you start praying. You guys start uniting, start working together. The day is going to come. Very soon, we're going to, أوحينا is going to be different. It's going to be أوحينا إلى موسى أن أسري بعبادي. It's going to, oh Musa, take my people, get out. Move. You're going to rebel against Fir'aun, move. They have no permission to move. They're all slaves. They can't just leave. Based on the law of the land, Banu Israel can't just get up and leave. They're slaves. They have owners. They have to buy themselves out or be granted permission. So this was an act of rebellion, that they were going to get up and leave after Musa alayhi salam had exhausted every possibility with getting Fir'aun to accept the request. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's miracle, الطوفان والجراد والقمل والضفادع والدم آيات مفصلات. In another ayah, في 9 آيات إلى فرعون وقومه. 9 miracles Fir'aun was given just to free Banu Israel. You don't want to believe? Umrah. Don't believe. It's your problem. But at least free Banu Israel. He wouldn't free them. And he was granted one chance after the other. So Musa alayhi salam turned to his people, buckle up. It's going to be, this is going to be scary. It's not going to be fun. And it wasn't. It wasn't at all. They would reach, they would listen to him. Because they performed tawakkul, they prepared themselves. And when they were told by Musa, we're leaving, they got up and they left. When they came to the Red Sea, brothers and sisters, when they came to the Red Sea, they had no idea what was going to happen next. They had no idea what was going to happen next at all. Not even Musa alayhi salam. They didn't know what was going to happen next. They arrived at the sea. That's it. We can't swim our way across the Red Sea to get to the other side. So what do? Fir'aun and his jaysh is right behind us. The army is behind us. So we're going to turn around and fight. Banu Israel is 600,000 people, most of them children and women. The number of men was very low. This was not something they wanted to do. But they had, فَعَلَيْهِ تَوَكَّلُوا. They said, عَلَى اللَّهِ تَوَكَّلْنَا. Upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala we have performed tawakkul, so we're going to do it. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told Moses, take your staff, hit the sea and watch what happens. And he did, alayhi salatu wasalam. But the point of the ayah is that tawakkul is what you need to do when you know what's coming next is not going to be pleasant. When you are required to put in a colossal amount of effort. When you're going to actually have to commit yourself to something that is scary to commit yourself to. That you're going to have to take a stand that is not popular, that won't win you popularity contests. You're not going to do well with this. But it's the right thing to do. This is when you have to say, Ya Rabb alayka tawakkalt. This is the right thing to do. I've assessed, I'm going to depend upon you in terms of what comes next. Whatever comes next. Not every story ends like the story of Musa alayhi salam. Not everyone's going to be given their magical staff. Some people, that'll be their end. That's how they're martyred and they go back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Tawakkul is accepting the outcome, whatever it is. Musa and Banu Israel at that time were ready. Whatever happens, whether we make it or we don't make it, we die trying. We make it or we die trying. They came to that conclusion for this story, which is why this ayah is of such importance. They didn't make the right choices afterwards, but they made it right for that. That's why at the end of this part of the story, وَأَوْرَثْنَا القوم الذين كانوا يستضعفون مشارق الأرض ومغاربها التي باركنا فيها وتمت كلمة ربك الحسنى على بني إسرائيل بما صبروا ودمرنا ما كان يصنع فرعون وقومه وما كانوا يعرشون. And we gave the inheritance of the land to the people who were being oppressed all over the land. And the bounty, the ultimate bounty of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was bestowed upon Bani Israel. And Allah destroyed Fir'aun and everything that he made and everything that he built his kingdom on. Subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's the first example of tawakkul within the verses we're going to recite tonight. The second verse that we're going to hear in the second set of 4 rak'at, inshaAllah, and we'll enjoy them bidnillah ta'ala, is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaking to the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam في قوله فلعلك تارك بعض ما يوحى إليك وضائق به صدرك أن يقولوا لولا أنزل عليه كنز أو جاء معه ملك إنما أنت نذير والله على كل شيء وكيل. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is speaking to his beloved عليه الصلاة والسلام and saying فلعلك تارك بعض ما يوحى إليك. Maybe you're considering not committing yourself to parts of what was revealed to you. He didn't do it, alayhi salatu wasalam. And this is the maqam of nubuwwah, the maqam of Sayyid al-Khalq, alayhi salatu wasalam. If he thinks of something momentarily, the Quran comes and talks about it. Imagine his life, alayhi salatu wasalam. This is a very difficult life to live. It's a very difficult life to live. That if he thinks of something, alayhi salatu wasalam, the Quran will come and talk about it. If he makes a choice that is not the optimal, perfect choice at that moment, the Quran will come and talk about it. عفى الله عنك لما أذنت لهم حتى يتبين لك الذين صدقوا وتعلم الكاذبين عبس وتولى أن جاءه الأعمى وما يدريك لعله يزكى وتخفي في نفسك ما الله مبديه وتخشى الناس والله أحق أن تخشاه. And you hide within your nafs that which Allah will later expose. And you're fearing what people may think or say about this. Allah is the one that you fear no one else. He couldn't even Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam ajma'in. You're at peace with your thoughts, meaning you're alone. No one's butting in. No one comes in. Wow, what is this? What thought is this? Why are you thinking this? No, think what you want. You can sit there and think the most bizarre things in the world. Outrageous thoughts you can entertain in your mind and then get rid of. No problem. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not holding you accountable for it. But sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, if he thinks of something, the Quran comes and talks about it. The Prophet ﷺ is dealing with the people of Mecca. They are threatening him with death, with murder. They are threatening, they're not threatening, they are killing his Sahaba. He had to send a third of his population to Abyssinia, which was an insane idea at the time, to go to another continent, a different culture, different language, different race of people altogether, different religion. The degree of fear that they were living under in Mecca was very high. So in his mind, for a moment, he's like, maybe do I tone it down a bit? Do I leave something out? Do I not emphasize a part of the deen to a certain degree? What do I do here? He's just thinking, alayhi salatu wasalam. He's not even leaning towards that decision. It's just a thought. The Quran, فَلَعَلَّكَ تَارِكٌ بَعْضَ مَا يُوحَى إِلَيْكَ. What? Maybe you're thinking about leaving some of what we are revealing to you. وَضَائِقٌ بِهِ صَدْرُكَ. And you're feeling this tightness in your chest about it. Is this what's happening? You're allowing yourself to feel the tightness. ضَائِقٌ بِهِ صَدْرُكَ is that tightness in the chest. That's referring to just feeling to being concerned and worried and just distressed about something. He was in distress, alayhi salatu wasalam, thinking how he's going to deal with these people who are asking him for something he does not have to offer them, who are not listening to his arguments, who are refusing to have an adult, mature conversation about things, who are acting like children with guns. They're behaving like children with weapons, and they're using and they're throwing their weight around killing people because they don't like what they believe or what they think. He's dealing with imbeciles, alayhi salatu wasalam, who are somehow given leadership positions. It was tiring him. They were continuously questioning everything. Certain things he would point out, alayhi salatu wasalam, would make them more aggressive, would make them more difficult. Yeah. What's the reason of it? وَضَائِقٌ بِهِ صَدْرُكَ أَن يَقُولُوا لَوْلَا أُنزِلَ عَلَيْهِ كَنْزٌ أَوْ جَاءَ مَعَهُ مَلَكٌ. Because they are saying to you, at least he should have a treasure of some sort to prove his prophecy. Where is his treasure? Where is the malak? Where is the angel? The guy with all those wings we heard about. Where is he? The one who came and spoke to Musa before and Isa. Where is he? Is he not available? Is he too busy? Let him come and talk to us. Let him see him. We see him. We're fine. We'll see him. We're fine. So they started making this argument. You didn't bring any wealth. You didn't bring any physical evidence. We don't even see the malak with you. What exactly do you want from us? Why are you asking us to believe in you? So the Prophet ﷺ is sitting there in distress, thinking about his message, feeling distress in his chest about what it is that he is doing because he can't offer what they are asking him for. Getting scared, ﷺ, from what they're going to do to him. Yeah. This is not the first time this happened. Right? When Fir'aun looked to Musa, this is why the link here is important. He told him, أَمْ أَنَا خَيْرٌ مِنْ هَذَا الَّذِي هُوَ مَهِينٌ وَلَا يَكَادُ يُبِينٌ فَلَوْلَا أُلْقِيَ عَلَيْهِ أَسْوِرَةٌ مِّن ذَهَبٍ أَوْ جَاءَ مَعَهُ الْمَلَائِكَةُ مُقْتَرِنِينَ. Fir'aun said the same thing. Who's better? Me, the king, or this weak guy who can't even articulate properly? At least he should bring أسورة من ذهب, bracelets of gold on him. Like may he show us Allah's wealth. May we see Allah's wealth on him, or may the malaika come with him when he comes and talks to us. So it's not the first time. It's the same story every time. You bring them the proper argument, they ask you for something that's completely irrelevant, just trying to distract. because a strong argument is hard. You can't push it back against it. So you have to distract. You have to come up with something that has nothing to do with it. You have to push back in a way that has nothing to do with the actual point that's being made. He's making a point, alayhi salatu wasalam. He's asking the people to dispute the point. If you have a better one, I'll leave what I have to what you have. But let's talk about this. They don't want to talk about this because they have no argument. Because it's just a status quo that they're benefiting from. It just works for them. And they don't have no interest of changing. People don't like changing things. Why? Because it means that it's an implied admission of fault. We don't want to admit that we were wrong. We don't want to admit that all these years I've been doing this fully convinced and now I'm admitting that, yeah, I got it wrong. Yeah, I got it wrong. What can you do? It's hard. People don't like doing that. It's an implied admission when you change your ways that you were doing it wrong to begin with. Most people prefer to die. And they're willing to put up with whatever comes next, not to admit that they were wrong. And that's exactly what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is offering them. And that's exactly what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will offer me and you. You want to continue to hold on to what is wrong and die with it? No problem. No problem. Go ahead. Stick to the wrong thing and die with it. Die on it and we'll talk about it Yawm al-Qiyamah. And that day you'll wish that you didn't. So the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, in his heart, he's having some, it's not doubts, he's having some struggles, some distress. So the Quran comes and says, فَلَعَلَّكَ تَارِكٌ بَعْضَ مَا يُوحَى إِلَيْكَ وَضَائِقٌ بِهِ صَدْرُكَ. What are you considering toning down some of your narratives or some of your arguments? You're feeling distressed because of what they're saying to you. Where is his kanz? Where is his malak? Where is the angel? Where is the treasure? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told, إِنَّمَا أَنْتَ نَذِيرٌ. You're exclusively a warner. You were not sent to bring them wealth or to bring them miracles or to bring them extraordinary phenomena. You were not sent for this. This will happen to them later. If they stick to what you're teaching, it will happen on its own. See, the miracle of Islam came later. It didn't come the moment the Prophet ﷺ delivered. The miracle of Islam was going to occur after people accepted it. It was the transformation of society that was going to happen later. It was the change in ethics and principles and values. It was the flourishing of science and knowledge and humanity with religion, in an experience that we still have not been able to parallel since it was killed off. We have not seen something similar where religion and science and humanity and ethics all come together in one big movement, despite political corruption, despite how the world is functioning, but you are producing a human being who is more in synchrony with the universe and himself and God than we've ever seen and than what we've ever seen even today. It was the miracle of what Islam was going to produce that was going to be the evidence of his prophecy, alayhi salatu wasalam. The miracle was going to be the person that accepted Islam. You were going to be the miracle. When you took Islam, you took the Quran and you allowed it to transform you and turn you into someone who is capable of achieving all of the things that you're asking the Prophet ﷺ to achieve. You want the malaika, marry a community, accept Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and praise Allah, and the malaika will come. And you will feel their presence. You don't need him to bring them to you. You want wealth? May a community stick to fairness and justice and hard work and tawakkul, and that community will make wealth and will have money. You don't need him to bring it to you, alayhi salatu wasalam. All that you ask him for, you will get if you follow this. But it was hard for him, alayhi salatu wasalam, at the time, because he had maybe 300 followers at tops. Half of them, a third of them was in a different country, and they were all oppressed. The majority of them were being mistreated. And he was not getting it wasn't a fair fight. It was not a fair fight. He wasn't able to make an argument because they weren't listening to him. So the ayah came and the ayah does not offer him, it's okay, take it easy. No. فَلَعَلَّكَ تَارِكٌ. What, you're thinking of forfeiting some of the concepts we're teaching you. You're allowing yourself to feel distressed and that tightness in your chest because of things they're asking you for. إِنَّمَا أَنْتَ نَذِيرٌ. You were only a warner. You were sent to perform a specific job. Perform the job. Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Wallahu ala kulli shay'in wakeel. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the trustee of everything. Don't worry. Put this matter in his hands, subhanahu wa ta'ala. Don't worry about it. Do your part. Don't worry about things. Don't over worry about stuff you can't change. See, when you worry about stuff that you can't change, you just weaken yourself. You're weakening your defenses and you're weakening your motivation and it doesn't do it. Worry about the things you can change. He was worried about how he was going to get their minds to change, alayhi salatu wasalam. You can't do that. He can't change people's minds. He can't change the way they think and what they see. Why worry about something you can't change? Stick to the textbook. Stick to what you're here to do. You have the catalog, you know where you're going, go for it. Allahu ala kulli shay'in wakil. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is trustee of everything. Put that matter in his hands, which is why the Prophet ﷺ later on in his life, like throughout this period, be walking down the street with Zainab or Fatima Zahra alayhi salam, walking down the street, and someone would pick up, and he would scoop up some dirt and throw it in his face alayhi salatu wasalam. And he would sit there, wiping his face off and his lihya, and his daughter is crying. And the Prophet ﷺ would look at her, and this is like, you find this 3 or 4 times within the Mecca period. لا تبكي فإن الله ناصر أباك ولو بعد حين. Don't cry. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will grant your father victory, even if it comes later. Meaning, even if it's not during his life, it'll come later. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will see this through. It's not my job to worry about some things that I can't change. Tawakkul does not mean that you worry about the stuff that you can't change. Tawakkul means that you leave the stuff that you can't change in Allah's hands, and you worry about what you can do. That's what tawakkul is. You worry about what you can do, and you leave the stuff that you can't change in Allah's hands, because why worry about them? Why worry about something you have no control over? That's a waste of time, wallah, and energy and effort. And it burns you on the inside, and it takes away your ability to be happy. The last set of verses that we're going to talk about, we have 5 minutes to do this, in Surah Hud, in the last set of 4 rak'at, is what Hud alayhi salam said to his people. The surah is called Hud. He is not the longest story. If the surah is going to be named after the longest story, it would be called Surah Nuh. And then you'd have 2 Surah Nuh in the Quran, and that would be awkward, because it's the longest story in the surah by far. If it was going to be called by the most dramatic of the stories, then it would be called by Surah Salih, because that was more dramatic. But it was called Surah Hud because of Sayyidina Hud's narrative. It's what Sayyidina Hud said. He perfectly explained what Islah, what reform is. He perfectly articulated what reform is, what prophets were sent to actually deliver to their people. Reform, social reform, and financial reform, and spiritual reform, and political reform. So what they told him is, إِن نَقُولُ إِلَّا اعْتَرَاكَ بَعْضُ آلِهَتِنَا بِسُوءٍ. What our narrative about you, O Hud, is going to be, is that one of our gods has infected you with something in your brain, which is why you're saying nonsense. That's their narrative about him. So his answer, alayhi salam, قَالَ إِنِّي أُشْهِدُ اللَّهَ وَاشْهَدُوا أَنِّي بَرِيءٌ مِّمَّا تُشْرِكُونَ مِن دُونِهِ فَكِيدُونِي جَمِيعًا ثُمَّ لَا تُنظِرُونِ إِنِّي تَوَكَّلْتُ عَلَى اللَّهِ رَبِّي وَرَبِّكُمْ مَا مِن دَابَّةٍ إِلَّا هُوَ آخِذٌ بِنَاصِيَتِهَا إِنَّ رَبِّي عَلَى صِرَاطٍ مُسْتَقِيمٍ. His answer to them would be, well, if that's the case, then Allah is my witness, and you be my witness, that I am not like you. And I am innocent from all of the transgressions that you are performing. All of the shirk that you are performing, I have nothing to do with it. There's a difference between you and me. I am now taking a step back from you. In Islah, you need that a little bit. You need to have tazayyul. You have to have some. You cannot come on board with an oppressor. You can't meet them halfway. If they're oppressing, you have to take a step back and say, this is different. I am ana bari' min hada. I wash my hands from your oppression and from the sin that you are in. I wash my hands of it. Saying that meant that Hud alayhi salam is going to be target of assassination, because they told him, if you keep on saying this, we're going to kill you. They didn't imply it. They explicitly told this to him. You continue to make these arguments, we're going to murder you. So Hud alayhi salam had to make his stand clear. He had to make his stand clear. Starting by making it very clear that he was not affiliated with them. That he refused categorically that which they are preaching, that which they are practicing. بريء مما تشركون من دونه فكيدوني جميعا ثم لا تنظرون. So go ahead, do what you need to do. If what you believe is correct is to try and kill me, kaid is to try and harm me. Fakiduni, go ahead, kiduni, kill me. Do what you want with me. He's not the first person to say this, alayhi salatu wasalam. Nuh alayhi salam said this, and Musa alayhi salatu wasalam said this, and Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam said this. All the prophets at one point in their lives, they had to turn to the people who were oppressing them and say, do your best. I'm not afraid of you. Do your best. Do what you need to do. I'm going to do what I believe, and you go ahead and do what you believe. And if killing me is what you need to do, go ahead. Go ahead. فَكِيدُونِي جَمِيعًا ثُمَّ لَا تُنظِرُونَ. And don't act like you're sympathetic towards me. You're going to give me time. You're going to try. No. Do what you need to do. I'm not begging you for anything. I'm not asking you to pardon me, or to give me some time, or to forgive me, or let's talk first. No. Do your thing. Why? Why is he so powerful here? إِنِّي تَوَكَّلْتُ عَلَى اللَّهِ رَبِّي وَرَبِّكُمْ. I depend upon Allah, my Lord and yours. So I'm not afraid of you. That's why tawakkul brings courage. The reason that I talked about these two things in these yesterday and today is because they're very, very interconnected. They're very interconnected. مَا مِن دَابَّةٍ إِلَّا هُوَ آخِذٌ بِنَاصِيَتِهَا. There is no living thing except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will bring Yawm al-Qiyamah from their foreheads. Meaning they'll be brought against their will, whether they like it or not. Every living thing, Yawm al-Qiyamah, will be brought by their nasiyah. Everyone's going to be held accountable. So what is Hud saying? That, yeah, if you kill me, you'll be brought to Yawm al-Qiyamah for accountability. That's fine. Do your thing. Inna Rabbi ala siratim mustaqim. Indeed, my Lord functions and judges and gives decree on a straight path, on a righteous path. There will be no mistreatment. There will be no injustice Yawm al-Qiyamah. Fairness will be delivered. So go ahead, take your best shot. Because I'm not standing down. Because this is what I believe in, this is what I stand for, and this is who I am. You don't like it? Take your best shot. Do what you need to do. I'm not afraid of you, and I'm not asking you of anything. And I will never, ever beg you for anything. This is what Hud alayhi salam said. This is tawakkul. This is tawakkul. It's a beautiful thing, isn't it? Hud alayhi salam's words here, they fill you with this integrity and strength. Allah. Hud alayhi salam speaking openly. He's not afraid. Do what you want. He didn't know that he was going to be saved. Many prophets were killed. Many prophets. The majority of prophets were killed historically. The majority of them were killed historically. So Hud alayhi salam didn't know. But he had that trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I'll end with that inshallah. Subhanahu wa ta'ala. أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وآله وصحبه أجمعين.
Allah